I can't believe that night in the NBA, man. Just so much insanity. I still can't believe what happened in the draft lottery.
Dude, I am absolutely floored. It's 10:19 p.m. Eastern as we record. It's been a few hours now since we learned the Dallas Mavericks landed the number one pick. We'll go through winners and losers of the draft lottery today. Tom, obviously the Mavericks are the biggest winner here. Everybody on social media is talking about how things are rigged. I'm wondering if simulation theory is real, if we are indeed in a simulation here. How do you get the number one pick just a few months after trading Luka, and now Nico and the Mavs front office and ownership get rewarded with the number one pick? How is this possible, Tom?
There have been two nights that my phone has blown up due to NBA transactions, NBA news. One was the Luka Doncic trade, where my phone was on fire when that happened late at night over the weekend. The second time is when the Dallas Mavericks won the draft lottery for Cooper Flagg. This is insane. Like my phone, of all my friends, all my family, everybody hitting me up, people within the league hitting me up, just like the basketball gods. The word rigged is being thrown around a lot in my phone. I don't think the league is rigged per se, but it's a horrible look when you have Rick Welts leaving the NBA league office, joining the Golden State Warriors, joining recently with the Dallas Mavericks, and saying a quote that invokes the conspiracy theories. He said, "I left the league office 40 years ago. I was part in 1985, the Patrick Ewing one. Everyone thought that was rigged, and he's still answering for all these conspiracy theories in the league. And now he's part of the Mavericks front office. And it's just, there's no other league that deals with this. There's no other league. It's part of the reason why we launched Basketball Illuminati podcast, is because no other league has been rampant with conspiracy theories than the NBA. To trade Luka Doncic to the Lakers and then get the number one overall pick, a lot of things had to happen for them to be eligible to get the number one overall pick. But man, LeBron James sending out laughing emojis on this night. I get it, man. Like, you just got to laugh at a certain point.
Well, look, I mean, to address the people that believe in conspiracies here, Tom, let's put on our little, tinfoil hats. Let's play Basketball Illuminati here. The only way I think really to influence the draft is with weighted lottery balls. I was in that room in 2019, the year Zion Williamson went number one to the Pelicans and they won the lottery. It's a real machine. There's real lottery balls bouncing around, air blowing around, everything going crazy. There's people in the room. The numbers, the combinations are determined ahead of time. The way to influence results would be weighting the balls, having some balls heavier than others, lighter than others, and you could therefore influence the probability that perhaps certain balls are drawn. I don't think they're fix it. I think this is just a classic scenario in which the most entertaining outcome ends up happening, ends up becoming a reality. That's my thought, Tom. Stuff like this happens in life, but just to address those conspiracy theorists, weighted lottery balls would be the way to influence odds, but not directly fix something like with a frozen envelope where you know which one to choose. Weighted balls would just influence an odds. So instead of 1.8% for Dallas, maybe it becomes 9% or 8%. But even then, regardless, the fact that actually happened, like, it's just, as you said, it's just going to cause people to believe it's fixed and rigged. It feels like WWE. It just does. Even if it's not fixed, it does feel like WWE. That's the way it feels.
It feels that way. And that might be our human condition and the fallacies of the human brain to believe that there is some ulterior motive here, or a force that is pulling the strings above the NBA. The one way you could get rid of that is get rid of the lottery altogether and just say, if you miss the playoffs, you have an equal chance of winning the lottery, or just saying, hey, get rid of the lottery and ping pong balls altogether and just going to a free agency route where if you miss the playoffs, you have a certain number of cash or cap space you can offer a player like Cooper Flagg, and then it becomes free agency. It becomes college hoops, where you basically are trying to recruit a Cooper Flagg to your team with money, with organizational culture, with coaching, with your talent on the roster, and you get rid of all these conspiracies if you do that. Now, the Dallas Mavericks had to lose that play-in game in order to get that. They were the 10th slot in the West standings, and so if they beat the Memphis Grizzlies, they're no longer eligible to be in the lottery. So, in order to think that this was fixed, you have to think that the Dallas Mavericks, tanked their way to get into the play-in tournament, lose to the Memphis Grizzlies to ensure that they get the 10th, they miss the playoffs. And then 1.8% is 1.8%. That doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means that less than 2 times out of 100, you're going to get this result. And still, it's very hard for the fans, layman fans, people who just don't understand the NBA to really wrap their heads around the fact that the Dallas Mavericks, they get the CEO from the NBA league office, comes in and says, man, I was a part of that 1985 NBA draft lottery, the frozen envelope where the Knicks get Patrick Ewing, and is one of the largest conspiracy theories in NBA history. The same guy who was running that draft, Rick Welch, says, I was there. I was running the draft back in 1985, and here I am with the Dallas Mavericks. This is crazy. And he said the word surreal in the quote. I believe it was Ben Golliver of the Washington Post. So this is just one of those nights you will never forget when Cooper Flagg, one of the greatest prospects to hit the NBA this century, I would argue in NBA history, he is one of the great prospects we've ever had come through. And the Dallas Mavericks, Nico Harrison, gets Cooper Flagg. And I've seen it. You believe that this isn't a great fit, even though they win. They're the big winner of draft lottery. You're not totally thinking this is a great fit next to Anthony Davis and this organization. I want to hear your theory why.
I mean, look, it's more just from the situation standpoint. Like, Dallas has lost a lot of fans, and they're in a situation where, fans don't trust Nico Harrison. There's still fans today calling for Nico Harrison to be fired. There's people who don't trust the front office. For Cooper, you're going to a adversarial situation. You're going to a team in which there's a lot of dysfunction right now. You're going to a team with 2 injury-prone stars, one of whom in Kyrie Irving is already going to be out for most, if not all, of next season. Like, it's just not an ideal situation for Cooper Flagg to go into. You're going to a team where, like, if you don't come close to Luka, you're going to be considered less than him. Whereas a team like Utah or a Washington, somewhere like that, you can be whoever you're going to be, and it's going to be accepted and embraced and loved. But with Dallas, I don't think it's a great situation for him for those reasons. Obviously, for Dallas, they're the biggest winner of the night. The Dallas Mavericks, and Nico Harrison specifically, are dramatic winners. You saw the video the Mavericks posted on their socials of Nico Harrison jumping out of his chair, everybody in that front office celebrating and screaming and humping each other. Like, they were all excited. Too excited.
No, we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't get on them for being excited for getting number 1 overall pick. We can't do that. Humping, that was funny. But if you're a fan of the Mavs, you want to see that. You want to see them going nuts for it, right?
For sure.
And look, I hear what you're saying. Is like the timelines don't work out. But remember, we would have said this about David Robinson and Tim Duncan if the Spurs got Cooper Flagg. We would have been like, hey, this is just like the Twin Towers that they had in San Antonio. Tim Duncan gets the number 1 overall pick to the San Antonio Spurs. David Robinson was the same age that Anthony Davis is now. I'm not saying that they're the same type of player or the same injury history, but if you believe that David Robinson getting Tim Duncan and winning the title shortly thereafter was kind of the template for the San Antonio Spurs, you could talk yourself into Anthony Davis next to Cooper Flagg is that next prototype. Now, the big difference is Sean Elliott was not injured for the whole year, and Kyrie Irving at this age is likely to be out for much of next season, if not the entire season. So I get it. From a win now standpoint or like next season standpoint, I don't see it being a good fit. But this is the Dallas Mavericks getting Cooper Flagg at 19 years old. This is not about next year or the year after that. I don't even think this is about the next 4 years. This is about Cooper Flagg is on your team for the long haul for the next decade. And so for me, I don't think this has any sort of ill will or any sort of thought that they're not going to keep Cooper Flagg. I think they're going to keep Cooper Flagg, and I think they're going to build next to Anthony Davis. And Nico Harrison just got a new lease on his job security, man. He is set for life.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I'm not totally convinced. I think they're going to do their due diligence and look at Dylan Harper and look at trade situations. I think you're going to see Nico Harrison call up the Milwaukee Bucks and ask about Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think you're going to see him look at all his options. That would be my prediction, is that you're going to get that conversation, that you're going to get him saying it's not a lock that it's Cooper, and that they're going to review all their options. And that's going to drive Mavericks fans crazy. That's my prediction. I don't know that for sure. That's not sourced. It's just my prediction. And I think the Giannis factor here looms over. And it also puts into focus the poor return the Mavericks got for Luka as well, because they don't have enough picks to package with number one. But maybe Milwaukee, if they were to indeed want to trade Giannis, number one would have more appeal than a group package from another team. The one thought I do want to tie to the Mavericks here, Tom, is they had a 1.8% chance of moving up to number one. This is the worst odds of any team in the history since they flattened the odds in 2019. I was in the room in 2019 when the Pelicans ended up getting the number one pick, and they had a 6% chance. I believe it was the seventh best odds of moving up to number one. And I thought that was crazy when that happened. It was crazy last year when the Hawks moved up from 10 to number one. They had 3% chance at moving up to number one. So 11th best odds for Dallas moving up. This sets a new high or low, depending on how you want to look at it, for the team moving up to number one. One of the losers, I think, in this whole thing here, Tom, is the NBA. The flattened draft lottery odds have not addressed tanking. You still have teams that suck, that are tough to watch all year. They're not quite 10, 11, 12 win teams like some Bobcats or the process Sixers. But the Jazz and Wizards were horrible this year. The Hornets were horrible this year. These teams won under 20 games. They stunk start to finish all year long, and they only hit 14% odds, whereas these other teams tanking out of the playoffs, tanking into the middle of the lottery, because your odds are pretty good. Like your odds are still good, so you don't have to bottom out to get 25% odds at number one. You have to bottom out just to the middle. And you have pretty good odds. So I don't think the NBA doing this has actually solved tanking at all. I think you could make a very strong argument that it has only worsened tanking. And I think the NBA is in a position here with some of these teams that have moved up. 10th best odds Atlanta last year, 11th best odds Dallas this year, number one. And that does not even factor in the teams that landed at 2, 3, or 4 in every year. I think the NBA is going to take a hard look at figuring out a new way with the lottery, whether that's pulling out the old Mike Zarin wheel idea from a decade ago. Mike Zarin, Celtics executive, talking about the wheel every year, picks are determined, and that there's no lottery. It's a wheel. Like 1 year you get the first pick, 1 year you get the 17th pick, 1 year you get the 12th pick. After that idea came out about a decade ago when I was writing for Celtics blog, I spun that off as the lottery wheel, where it's every year you get a certain amount of odds. Maybe you want to get rid of the lottery with stuff like this happening, but regardless of what the NBA does, I do think it's worth looking at, Tom, because I think the flattened odds have been a failure, and it has not addressed what they wanted to do, and that's by eliminating or minimizing the amount of tanking going on.
Yeah, the math is the math. 3% odds for Atlanta last year, and they win the number one overall pick. This year, less than 2% odds in getting the number one overall pick, and they cash that. I at some point, the league office has to just say, maybe the teams will start listening to the statistical likelihood of this happening and just say, these are extreme examples. These are extreme outcomes that you can't expect, no matter what, to win every year with a 2%, a 3%. Look, there's a lot of teams in the back half of the lottery that are looking at it and being like, man, we had even better odds than the Dallas Mavericks. Why didn't we get the number one overall pick? And there's just the Charlotte Hornets, the Washington Wizards, the New Orleans Pelicans, the Utah Jazz. They got to feel like that was a wasted year. This was not a 5-player draft. You cover this as well as anybody. this was a one-player draft, and then maybe a 1B in Dylan Harper. But this was, everyone wanted Cooper Flagg, and I wonder, I don't think that the Dallas Mavericks, I'll just go back to here with the real life scenario here. The Dallas Mavericks, I don't think will trade number one. I think what's more likely is that the San Antonio Spurs trade Dylan Harper to the Milwaukee Bucks for the chance to get Giannis Antetokounmpo. They basically say, all right, we would pair Cooper Flagg with Victor Wembanyama, but outside of that, let's get into the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes. We'll see what happens with the San Antonio Spurs, but I felt like if Houston or San Antonio jumped up to number 2, you would see them be at the top of that sweepstakes for Giannis, and I suspect things got a lot more interesting in San Antonio. I don't know if I love the fit with Dylan Harper with San Antonio either.
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly, the Spurs are one of the biggest winners of the draft lottery for sure. And you nailed it, Tom. They're the biggest winner because they're in a driver's seat situation here to possibly go out and get Giannis or trade down. Because, as you said, I don't like the fit for Dylan Harper in San Antonio. I think it's a horrible fit for him. I think it's a bad fit for the Spurs. Harper is undeniably a very, very talented point guard. He's got about 6'6" in shoes. He's got great size. He's an elite downhill attacker and finisher at the basket. He's a good distributor. You hope his shot develops. What does it sound like I'm describing? De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle. They already have guards with up and down jumpers. They already have guards that are downhill attackers. They already have guards that are versatile defenders in Castle, at least. They don't need another guy like that in Dylan Harper. So the Spurs, I would expect they're going to dangle the number 2 pick in addition to other future picks and assets to try to go out there and get Giannis Antetokounmpo. Or there'll be a team that maybe tries to trade down. And that's where I think San Antonio could be especially interesting here, because I think, the Spurs have a lot of picks. Don't get me wrong, but they don't have like the most picks. They don't have, the most picks in the league here. And Bobby Marks, he does this great column for ESPN where he ranks the draft pick assets. Like, it's one of my favorite columns anybody does. And he had the Spurs ranked 13th for draft asset capital. That was before the lottery. So they would obviously move up with the number 2 pick instead of the number 8 odds, which is what they had. But they don't have more picks than like Houston still. Houston still has more quality picks in the years to come. Utah, they're not going to trade for Giannis, but they still have more picks. Like Brooklyn still has way more picks in the years to come. They just don't have the immediate return in number 2. And never mind Oklahoma City, who still has the most picks if they were to flame out and somehow lose to Denver. And who knows, maybe they could be the Giannis team. But I think for San Antonio, trading down is the other scenario that is like less fun to talk about, for them, but it is a very real situation. And the one thought I do want to tie this to, Tom, is New Orleans is a loser tonight in the sense that they fell 3 spots. They ended up with the number 7 pick. But I do think they could be a winner in the sense that the Spurs, if they were to get Giannis, could be a 3-way trade. Like, New Orleans has the rights to Milwaukee's next 3 years in the draft. Milwaukee would want those picks back. So in theory, maybe Milwaukee gets the number 7 pick and a bunch of picks from San Antonio and or their own picks back from Milwaukee. And the Pelicans trade up to number 2 and get a guy like Dylan Harper who would be a great fit for that team. So maybe the Pelicans are a loser tonight, but depending on how the Giannis stuff shakes out, they could end up a winner. But I think all this trade stuff, Tom, like Dallas at 1, San Antonio at 2, Philly at 3, all of these teams I think are going to be heavily involved in trade conversations, heavily involved in the next handful of weeks before the draft.
Yeah, it's interesting because then you go 1, Dallas Mavericks. You're thinking maybe they look at potentially trading Cooper Flagg. I still can't wrap my head around. But if you were going to trade Luka Doncic, maybe you'd be okay with the idea of trading Cooper Flagg. That would be wild to even think of the concept of trading not just Luka but Cooper Flagg in a 4-month span. That would be.
Is it that wild? Is it really? Is it really that wild? It's not that wild.
I mean, all right. Put it this way.
It's not that wild.
Are you saying it's not that wild because of the precedent that they did trade Luka? So, like, by comparison?
For a lot of reasons, it's not wild.
Really? I'm stunned by this. You're not as much of a believer as it. in Cooper Flagg as I am.
No. I'm not as much of a believer in Nico Harrison. I have full belief in Cooper Flagg. I'm not a believer in Nico Harrison. That's the whole thing here. I don't believe in him.
They were pretty excited.
Why would you have any belief in him? What has he proven this whole year? What has he proven?
I know.
There's no reason to believe.
I know. So what do you think? All right, so Dallas goes 1.
Well, here's San Antonio. Let me really poke holes in Cooper Flagg here. What if Nico just doesn't believe in his offensive ceiling? What if Nico acknowledges that he's going to be a very good defender, but not quite an elite defender? What if Nico Harrison says, yeah, he'll be a good offensive player, maybe, but like a better version of Aaron Gordon, but not a star? What if that's his assessment? Is it completely unfathomable that somebody could come to that conclusion that Cooper Flagg is a elite prospect, but not quite as a can't-miss prospect as some people believe? I don't think he'd be the only person in the world to feel that way. I think there are people in the league that feel that way, that Cooper's great, but not like AD level prospect, not even a Zion level prospect. And people might think I'm an idiot for even suggesting he's the best prospect since Katie Oden. You know what I mean? Like, there are people who feel that way, that he's a great prospect, but not an elite prospect. If he were to come to that conclusion, that would be an opportunity to him to get a complete king's ransom for Cooper at number 1, whether it's a Giannis immediate return or whether it's a haul of draft picks that he was unable to get for Luka. So okay. I'm just really poking holes here. I don't believe that way about Cooper, but there are people that do, and maybe Nico's one of them.
All right, let me throw this at you, Kev. What if Daryl Morey calls up Nico Harrison and says, I'll put Joel Embiid. You said you wanted defense wins championships, right? What if I put Joel Embiid on the table and we'll trade up to number 1 to get Cooper Flagg? Joel Embiid's already an MVP. He's a defensive player of the year candidate every year he's on the floor. And you could see a scenario in which we have a Jason Tatum, Markelle Fultz, the Philadelphia 76ers jump back up to get the number 1 overall pick. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but you could see Daryl Morey getting on the phone right now with Nico Harrison and saying, you said defense wins championships. You want to win right now. The window is right now. Let's see if we can work something out where Anthony Davis wants to play with a 5. Kev, we know Anthony Davis doesn't want to play at the 5. I know you got Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford for that, but you could have Joel Embiid. That's Daryl Morey's thinking.
That would be worse than the Luka trade, I think.
It would be
can't
wild.
Rule it out.
Again,
I can't rule it out.
We are through the Rubicon here. We have gone to the other side where the Dallas Mavericks won the lottery, the number 1 overall pick, months after, of course, trading Luka Doncic. I looked this up. The last time that an NBA finalist won the number 1 overall pick, like the year after. So in this situation, the Dallas Mavericks go to the 2024 NBA Finals. They trade Luka Doncic at the deadline. They miss the playoffs. They land the number 1 overall pick. Believe it was 1998. Michael Jordan, they win the championship with the Bulls. Then the next year, Elton Brand goes number 1 overall to the Chicago Bulls in 1999. And of course, where did he go to college? He was a big man from Duke. So it's all happening all over again. Now, of course, the Dallas Mavericks didn't win a championship like the Bulls did in 98. But it just to reiterate, this is crazy. We haven't seen it this century. Since 2000, we've never seen someone go to the NBA Finals and then a year later win the number 1 overall pick with a great prospect in Cooper Flagg. Just nuts.
Another big loser from lottery night is the Houston Rockets. Obviously, they only dropped 1 spot. They had the 9th best odds with the Suns pick. They dropped the number 10, but they're the biggest loser because Dallas, San Antonio, Philly, some of these teams that moved up and in theory could be competitors for a Giannis trade. Houston's chances get knocked a bit in the Giannis sweepstakes. But as I said earlier, Tom, they still have a ton of future picks. They still have those future Suns picks. They still are the best team that has a lot of first-round draft picks to trade into the future. So they're not a massive loser, but I do think in the short term, you look at their assets, you'd rather obviously get number 2 from San Antonio than number 10 from Houston. Unless, you're Milwaukee and you're not the biggest Dylan Harper fan, then maybe it doesn't make a difference. But I do think Houston still qualifies as a loser tonight, considering the hope for Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah, definitely. And they still have Reed Shepherd. They have an ability to swing a trade with their picks that they have from Phoenix. This is an issue that I think a lot of teams were worried about. Houston and San Antonio jumping up number one to get Cooper Flagg, obviously, and then having the assets to swing a trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. I still think the San Antonio Spurs could do it, but Houston, it's going to be really interesting. If Kevin Durant wants out of Phoenix and the Phoenix Suns say, hey, we're going to put him on the trade block, I think the Houston Rockets, by virtue of the San Antonio Spurs getting the number 2 pick, I think they are in the pole position for Kevin Durant or a player of that talent. I think they need that desperately offensively. And the question is, what are they willing to put into a trade for a guy at KD's age? And does that number 10 pick get the Phoenix Suns on the phone and say, hey, you want a lottery pick? We got it right here for you. I know it's not a stacked draft, but this is an opportunity for the Phoenix Suns to kind of rebuild around Devin Booker and see what they can do.
Yeah, I've been pretty consistent in reporting that Phoenix doesn't want their own picks back. I don't know, as I said to you on the pod a few weeks back, Tom, I don't know if that's just them using public negotiations, leaking that out there. In other words, they actually do want their own picks back, but they're using this to try to create a little bit of leverage for themselves. But that's been out there for months. It is the belief in league circles that they don't want their own picks back, that they want to remain competitive and have other picks from other teams rather than their own. We'll see how it plays out. Personally, I think it would make a hell of a lot of sense to get your own draft picks, but I see where they're coming from in that if you still have Devin Booker on the team, and if you get another quality player back for KD as well, you're not going to suck. You might be in the middle anyway, so maybe it would make more sense to get somebody else's picks rather than your own. So I get it in that regard. One of the winners of this draft lottery as well as the Philadelphia 76ers, because their pick was only top 6 protected. They end up at number 3. They move up a couple spots. They get to keep it. Rights to Ricky Sanchez had their live show, another lottery party. Never expected to have one of those. Fans are going crazy when they got to move up into the top 4. I'm happy for Sixers fans after this absolutely just horrific year, Tom. But for Philly at number 3, it's very similar to Dallas at 1 with Cooper and San Antonio at 2 with Dylan Harper. We're at number 3. And in my mock draft later on this podcast, I have them taking Ace Bailey. I don't love any of the fits for Philly at number 3. Ace Bailey's not ready to help you win games right now. He couldn't even help Rutgers. You already got Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey. So are you really going to take a Trey Johnson or Jeremiah Fears, like a guard like that? I just don't love the fits at 3 for Philly. So to me, I view them like the others as a trade down team or a trade up team or a trade out team. I just can't see why they would stick at number 3.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, I could talk myself into like Knipple or Malawach as like here's Malawach, a kind of successor to Joel Embiid.
Trade down for him.
Yeah, because I don't think you want to take those 2 prospects at number 3. You can trade down and get them and get some value out of that. We know Daryl Morey is all about trying to squeeze out as much value in draft picks as he can. So that makes a lot of sense to me. But if they trade out, they're going to be able to dangle Ace Bailey to a team that is very much looking to rebuild and down the line. Like you talk about Utah Jazz. If the Utah Jazz want to have an opportunity to move up and get Ace Bailey, I don't know where they value Ace Bailey, but let's say they want him, right? They're going to have to call up Philly and say, hey, what is it going to take to get this guy? And you look at Markkanen, you look at the ability to shoot the ball. Is there a trade that can happen where Markkanen is not on the timeline with Walker Kessler, Isaiah Collier, and whomever they're going to get in their lottery pick? You wonder if that is a Utah Jazz trade where they call up Daryl Morey over there in Philly and decide, hey, if you guys want to make a trade for a win now guy, I don't know if Jared McCain, if that is something that Daryl Morey would put on the table to try to get a star player, but you could see how Lauri Markkanen could be moved this summer, whether it's the Philadelphia 76ers or elsewhere, because he had a no trade restriction this year. And I know plenty of teams would want to pluck him from that situation in Utah, where I think there's a level that Markkanen can get back to after he started the All-Star game a couple years back.
I think you're spot on, Tom. Utah or Washington, clearly the biggest losers of the night. I mean, worst case scenario, man. They moved down all 4 slots. They got leapfrogged by 4 teams. It couldn't have been literally any worse for them. Utah wins 17 games. Washington wins 18 games, and they fall to 5 and 6 respectively. But, as you said, Utah's got a ton of future picks. They have tradable pieces as well. If they want to move up, they could try to move up, whether it's to 2 or to 3. And for Washington at number 6, they have a lot of draft capital as well. They can move up if they wanted to. But ultimately, both of those fan bases went into the night hoping for Cooper Flagg. And they didn't get Cooper Flagg. In all likelihood, they're not going to be able to trade up to number 1 and get Cooper Flagg unless they went over the top insano levels with their offer for number 1. And you know what, man? I just feel bad for those teams, those fan bases. I was rooting for a Utah, rooting for a Washington, and to get rewarded.
Charlotte,
those are franchises.
This city is hurting, man.
I know. But for Charlotte, Charlotte, I feel a little different though, Tom, because I like their options at number 4. Like, I think Jeremiah Fears, Trey Johnson, like one of those guards would make sense next to LaMelo. But obviously Cooper would be the prize there. But I just don't like any of the picks at 5 or 6 for Utah or Washington. But I know what you mean with Charlotte. They never get number 1. They never get it.
Yeah, they got it with LJ, Grandmama. They got it. And then after that, they were number 2 in the AD draft. They were number 2 in the Dwight Howard draft. They were number 2 in the Shaq draft. And of course, number 2 in the Wemby draft. So they fall to number 4. I like Edgecombe. I think he's the right type of player for them. The defensive minded, the intense player on the wing. Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, Edgecombe, they're going to be fighting for minutes, but that's going to be a really interesting spot at number 4 for the Charlotte Hornets that fell back after a chance to bring home Cooper Flagg out of Duke.
Sounds to me like you're describing a pretty good 39-win team.
Yeah, well, that's the Charlotte Hornet way. I mean, to be a 39-win team. Yeah. That's the Washington Wizards way. Like, they finally tank. They give in to the tank, and then they come up empty-handed again. We come back to this thing where it's, if tanking is not rewarded, how many years do we have to see this happen before teams smarten up and say, look, 14% chance is 14% chance. There's an 86% chance we are not going to get the number 1 overall pick. And like you said, it just seems like the teams are not listening to the math. The stats are the probability is the probability. No matter how many losses you have, you're only going to have 14% chance. And yet that's not enough for some of these teams to say, you know what? Let's just go for the playoffs. And the worst thing that happens, we're going to win 30, 35 games. And the lottery odds being flattened at the top means that the teams at the back half of the lottery have a much better chance historically than they did historically. So that does incentivize teams to try to go for the play-in tournament. Unfortunately, Chicago, they lose the coin flip with Dallas to have the winning combination. Just heartbreak for Miami, for Chicago. All these teams are just sitting there, can't believe it, that the Dallas Mavericks, for all that they did, they traded away Luka Doncic, and what was their reward? Getting Cooper Flagg. Just crazy.